Hello, everyone. Megan here from Romance by the Book with the lovely Marielle.
Hello.
And this is week 2 for March's Book of the Month, Frostbitten by Rebecca Zanetti.
Yeah,
Um,
we had a lot going on
oh
in
yeah,
the first part. So
time.
Millie is possibly in trouble at work because her cover was blown on a job.
Hmm.
And Scott is the reason. However, she does have to go home to visit her aunt who had a tiny heart attack,
Yes.
and she wakes up in a pool of her ex-boyfriend's blood, and he is dead, and she is naked
And
and
she doesn't
doesn't
remember
remember
anything.
anything. So, so
Yes.
we
It's
are
a
in
lot.
her hometown. Scott has been called, not
Yes.
by her, but he is currently her lawyer, and they're trying to figure all this out in a
Yes.
small town where everybody is muddying the waters with their attempts to help. So there you
Yes.
go.
Exactly. So Scott goes to the station to sit in on the chief's interview with Clay's two brothers, the ones who attacked them the day before, Silas and Lonnie. Um, and also
And
the
this
chief,
was a thing where like he is only there because they agreed, like they
right?
said it was okay,
Yeah.
which was surprising because the last we saw them, they
Yeah.
were trying to fight Scott. So
Yes, exactly.
so
And also the chief says that this man Dirth called him with info on Millie with supposed evidence of how she could kill someone, some of which includes like an expunged juvie record, which of course the chief already knows about because he was part of that. She grew up in that town and it was one of her inventions went bad and blew up and it could have really hurt someone and so she got in trouble. Um
but also that was erased when she turned
right.
18. So
Um,
interesting.
Yes, and clearly this guy does have connections, even though you're not supposed to be able to find that. Expunged means gone. Like he should not have had access to that anyways. So they talk to the brothers who mostly just bluster about being absolutely positive that Millie is the one who killed their brother and how they're going to make her pay. And clearly the chief is like super not impressed with them and like basically lets them know that like they need to chill and that he's doing his job.
He
Um,
is, I mean, he is clear that like whatever he finds, that's what he's doing. So like if he finds that Millie is the one, then for sure, but that he will like arrest her and all of, well, he already arrested
yeah,
her, but like make sure she goes to
right.
jail and all that. But he needs to do his job and investigate. We do find out during this that and we had heard like through the grapevine
Right,
before that the brothers had kind of a dust up some kind of disagreement about
right,
their family business, and so we do kind of find out that the youngest brother um, was trying to do something different for work, like maybe real
right.
estate ish, flipping
Yeah.
houses or something like
Mhm.
that, and that he might have asked Clay for money.
Well, first
Um,
he asked them to buy him out, and they said no. And because of
mhm.
the terms of their like trust or whatever, they can't sell to anybody else. So basically, he's just stuck with his part of the business, and so he needed money a different way, which is when he apparently asked Clay for a loan. Though the one brother didn't even know about that, and the other one didn't know. He knew he asked him, but he didn't know if he actually gave him any money or not. Um, so yeah, that's really the bulk of what we get from them. And then that night, Millie and
And
Scott and
they, even
JT.
though we also find out that Clay like went home with ladies all the time. Like
Oh,
they're
right.
very they do
Non-committal.
the chief asks if he was seeing somebody, and they
Mhm.
do like have a look
Right.
between the two,
Yeah.
but they don't say they say that he wasn't serious about anybody and that he was a big time lawyer, so he could like get all the
Right.
ladies he wanted, like they're
Yeah.
very
And he was
I
not
don't
interested
know,
in
like
settling down with anybody basically because he could just have whoever he wanted.
yeah,
Um,
it was a weird like very frat boy sort
oh
of
yeah, big time.
response, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're mostly angry, and we do get like a few bits of
Yeah.
information through that.
And so back at the house, they're eating a pretty tense dinner. And JT takes Roscoe out for a run, and Scott goes to work trying to put all this timeline together and like figure out what all information they have. Um, and Dearth calls to harass Millie, and she threatens to have him arrested if he calls her again. Um,
He is also like, "Did you get fired yet?"
Mhm.
Also, like, so the things that he's saying do make him seem like he, one, has it out for her, but also that he is trying to, like,
Right,
do
actively
things to.
involved in what's going on with her, yeah. So shortly after that, JT busts in carrying Roscoe. The dog managed to find liquor in JT's room before he could stop him. So we should tell you that this dog, Roscoe, I think I told you he's like an ex-service dog. In the series up to now, you've learned things about him, one of which is that he has an alcohol problem. Um, Alcohol would usually kill a dog, but he really likes it. And anytime he gets his hands on it, he basically gets drunk like a person would, and like nothing happens to him. He doesn't get sick. He doesn't get like it has no lasting effects. Like it's weird, but, like, it's a problem. He's like an alcoholic dog. And so they try to just keep it all away from him, but he's very smart and he's very crafty. And, like, TJ's like, "It was in my trunk at the end of my bed." Like, he smelled it was in there. He got the trunk open and he got the bottle flipped
Open.
open down his throat before I could even do anything. Um, and so um they, like, stay up with him and, like, make sure he's drinking water, and they call the
They
vet
do.
overnight and just kind of, make sure that, he's fine. And, once the dog goes to sleep and they think he's, like, gonna be okay, they finally head up to bed and, they kiss as they're, like, talking to each other, and she tells him that she's tired of fighting this, like, pull between them, and she wants to just, like, bang it out, basically.
She does do a romance trope of, "Let's get this out of our system,"
Yeah.
which always works
Oh, every
exactly
time.
as planned.
Yeah.
So,
And so he kinda tells her, like, "I'm a mess," but, like, she's like, "I kind of am too right now, so, like, let's not make plans. Let's just like, I'm just tired. Like, let's do this." And so, she doesn't care. So they head up to his bedroom. They have sex. It's pretty intense, which surprises her in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of things about Scott surprise her when they happen. And it's super hot. And
yeah, and she doesn't seem like she's used to, like, sex being that intense or
yeah,
enjoyable in that way, I guess.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
she's very like, "Oh, no, what just happened here?"
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot more than what she expected. Um, and just in time to ruin the afterglow, the chief calls to tell her that that slimy county prosecutor has officially charged her with first-degree murder. Um, Scott thinks it's time to call in the team, but she's not ready to do that yet.
No. And also she's kind of like, we know that, like, the head guy is out of town. We
Right.
know that, like, other people are out on missions. And so she's just like,
They
she
can't do
is
anything right
very,
now anyway. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and she doesn't want to bother them.
Mhm.
Like like the overwhelming vibe is that she's just like,
It's
I don't
fine.
want to
Yeah.
bug them. We're okay
Yeah.
ish.
So at breakfast, they kind of get to know each other a little more, talking about their like hobbies and interests outside of work. And he talks to her about like what to expect for her preliminary hearing. When she goes for her first court date.
Which is like next week. They're doing
Right.
it so fast. And
Yeah.
the chief said you probably could get it pushed back,
Right.
but Scott doesn't really want to because he wants
Mm-mm.
to see what they have and
Right,
what
because
they're
they have to
actually.
present their evidence to the grand jury to like indict her, and until then, he's not going to know like what they have. And so then she gets a call from HDD to meet with Agent Rutherford, her boss, the one who was big mad at her about blowing her cover. And also he hates the Depops team. Like he's always trying to get them like all fired and he's a prick. So anyway, she gets a message that she has to go into the office and like meet with him. And then Scott gets a call from a DC detective friend of his, Tate Bianchi, saying that his client, Dirth's soon to be ex-wife, is missing and there's blood at the scene at her house. And he's like, okay, so they both have to head back to DC and deal with stuff.
Yeah. We had already, in a past chapter, he had said something about how he was going to need to go home and like pick up clothes and do, because he
Get
has like a
case
go bag in his
paperwork and
car,
stuff.
but he was like, I'm definitely, if I'm staying longer, then I need to go
Right.
back. So this becomes like a joint trip where they're doing multiple things.
Yeah.
And he also, while they're driving, he's kind of like, "Is it okay if we visit my mom? Because
Oh, right.
probably
Oh, yeah.
like
Well,
me
so first we
too."
visit her aunt who is at the hospital before they leave town, having her follow-up appointment. And she finds the pregnant twin, Verna, there visiting with her aunt while they're waiting for her prescription. And then the nurse twin, Valerie, shows up with the prescription, and Millie asks if they've remembered anything else about Clay or that night. And Valerie says she vaguely remembers something from college because they went to the same college where she heard that Clay was accused of assault at one point. But then it all just kind of like disappeared. Like she never heard well, like what the
What came of it?
outcome of it was. Yeah. And so Millie's like, well, at least that's something else for me to like look into. And so they go to DC, they meet with Tate, the cop, first and get they have Roscoe with them, of course, because he goes everywhere with them. Only for Roscoe to go rogue and rush around, jumping over desks to tackle this teenager who they have arrested and steal the small vodka bottle from his pocket and drink it, which is a hot mess. And then he wants cookie. He like steals these cookies that they had warned him off of earlier, and he's just like on a tear. And then Tate's partner, Detective Buckle, she finally like tackles the dog, and
She's like a supermodel, 6 foot tall, very
yeah,
like fancy
and she's very
looking, but she's
mysterious,
the
like,
one against him.
nobody even knows her first name, they all just call her Detective Buckle, it's very funny. Um, and so, yeah, she kinda tackles him, and,
I mean, someone needed to. That dog jumped over all the
he is
desks,
out
like
of
knocked
control,
over paperwork, was on a copy machine. Like I was just,
and she is like, "This dog, why the hell is he here?" Basically, and Tate's kind of like, "Oh god, I told him they could bring him," and so, anyway, it's funny. But so that's one thing about this series that I really like, there's a lot of comedic moments, and they all seem very like, they all flow, like, you're never taken out of the story, like, it's very natural, like, the way it happens, and the dog is, like, a big part of that, and he's
yeah.
hilarious. Um, but yeah, so, they tell Tate everything they know about Dearth from everything back to when they first met that day at his office, and then Millie goes to her office to find out that she's being terminated by that jerk boss of hers, Rutherford.
Yeah,
Um
like they make her wait downstairs, so she's not allowed to go up and whatever. But when
Mhm.
he comes, he's basically just hands her an envelope and says, this is your notice of termination. And he tells her that there is like an
Process,
appeals process if she wants to do that. But
and
he's
she's like,
kind
"Oh,
of
yeah, I
like,
do."
yeah, but he is very like, I can tell you right now that the
It's not gonna
outcome is
matter.
gonna be the same. Like, and so she's
Yeah.
kind of in shock,
Yeah.
even though she was worried that she, like, was gonna be in big trouble, she's kinda
Yeah.
shocked that she's fired, but,
She is, and she is planning to fight it, but she has bigger fish to fry at the moment, really. Um, and so and he's surprised, Scott's surprised when she gets back out there and says, like, "They terminated me," and he's like, "Okay, well, clearly we're gonna fight that, but, like, we have other stuff going on right now." So, they stop by, Scott's mom's house to ask her about Julie, the wife, because that's a good friend of hers, and if
I
she's
I
missing.
did wanna, like, pause for a sec just to say that, like, at this point, they have out loud to each other said, like, "Oh, I don't think this is a thing that could go anywhere. I don't think that we." But when she, like, comes out of the office and he's outside, like, walking the dog, he does, like, automatically just, like, reach for her hand and hold her hand, and she has the thought, like, "Oh, probably we shouldn't be holding hands outside this office." And, like, but it's like
Yeah,
they are, like, naturally falling into
yeah,
a, like, flow, like, they're in a relationship, even
yeah, for
though
sure.
with their mouths, they are saying something else.
Yes, for
So
sure.
anyway, sorry. But
Oh,
yes,
no,
back to the
totally.
info.
And so they stop by his mom's house to ask her about Julie Dearth. Millie is very nervous to meet his mom because she's super rich. They're like the heir to this like mustard fortune, which and therefore Scott is also super rich, which is another thing that she like didn't really know about him. Um, but of course his mom is lovely and she's covered in paint. She's like an artist. So they get there and she's just got like stuff
So,
everywhere.
like, the place itself looks it's like a penthouse that has all these, like, views of the Potomac and are
Yeah,
like, it's clearly very fancy and
very
expensive, but
fancy.
then when the human comes out, she is like
She's a mess.
she's just like, "I'm painting, let's" they're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
keep the dog away from your shoes," but, other than she's
yeah,
very, very
she's
cool
lovely.
and
Yeah.
chill.
So they stay for dinner, and afterwards, Scott goes to do some work in the office upstairs, and she calls Bridget, who is one of her team members. She's the computer expert. To she kind of tells her everything that's been going on, and kind of asks her to keep it to herself. And she's like, "I don't know if this is gonna work, but like, here's hoping, right?" And that's when she finds out that like the whole squad is like out on other cases. So she's like, "Phew!" Like she doesn't have anybody to tell. Nobody can do anything. Okay, great. This is perfect.
I
Um,
mean, Bridget is like, "I can call them back," and she was like,
she's like,
"Please do
"Nope, no,
not
no,
say anything.
no."
Everything's fine."
But so she wants Bridget to look into the IDs of the 3 men who tried to kill them, because the cops are keeping a lid on, like, who those people are, even though they've clearly already figured it out. And she also wants her to do a background check on Clay and his brothers, including about any assault accusations in college, and also on Dirth, because she wants to see if this guy's really a threat or if he's just, like, messing with her, basically. Um, and so she gets to see Teresa, Scott's mom, her studio, and is, like, in awe watching her, like, paint and stuff. And they end up staying the night there, uh, kind of like to protect ostensibly, like, to protect their mom from Dearth, like, in case because the wife is missing and, like, clearly they're friends and, she could be, like, a target of his if he decides to go off. And then in the morning, they're taking her to the airport and she's flying to Nantucket where she has a house and, like, Scott is making her go there basically and, like, disappear for a while.
I mean,
Um,
she doesn't fight it too bad, but she is kind of like, "I mean, I guess."
right,
And
if
then
you
she's
say
like,
so,
"Whenever
honey.
you guys are done with your murders, you can come visit me
Yeah.
there." And it's it's kind of like,
It
"Okay."
is, it's very funny. So they drop her off, at the airfield, and then they stop at Scott's house to get all his clothes and work papers and stuff, and then they go to Millie's house to do the same thing, and they walk in Scott inside, and Scott is, like, getting bad vibes, like, something feels off, and she's kinda looking around, and she's like, "The door was locked, nobody's been in here, like, what are you thinking?" And he's like, "I mean, I've heard the same truck pass by 3 times." Like, it's got, like, a muffler problem, like, and so he's recognizing that
He's
it's,
like,
like
"Yeah, you hear this, like, rattle," and she's like, "Oh, yeah," and it's funny because he is like, "I've heard this rattle,"
yeah.
and she diagnoses it like,
Right, oh,
"This
it's a
is
muffler
oh, yeah,
problem.
this is what's wrong with
Yeah,
the muffler, blah, blah, blah,"
yeah,
and he's like, "Okay, sure,"
but I've
but
heard it 3
then
times.
yeah, but then that muffler does come back,
It does, and it
and
stops, and someone lobs 3 Molotov cocktails into her house.
yeah. So in the
Um,
windows, which
yeah, and
is a
through her
problem.
windows. And they, of course, like, basically explode, throwing them across the kitchen. They run into the garage and get in her car to, like, escape quickly while the fire is, like, going on in her house. And so we've sort of flash forward to later, they've come back, they're watching the firefighters, like, putting the fire out, half her house is burned down, basically. Tate, their detective friend, shows up, and she tells him that she has some CCTV cameras, like, around her house, on her property, and so it's probable that she got, like, the license plates for the truck, if nothing else. Um, and so they go to the police station, and Tate and Scott are talking to Dirth and his lawyer. He's extremely smug and, like, overconfident as usual. He's clearly a narcissist. Um, Millie's in the other room watching with Detective Buckle, and they're talking about, like, what they think about what's going on. And they're looking at the tapes that Millie found from her office, but of course the plates were removed from the truck, so that doesn't get them anywhere. And the person's wearing, like, a mask, and she doesn't recognize, who they are. Um, so then Scott drives home, and Millie, like, falls asleep, and by home, I mean back to West Virginia. And Millie falls asleep, he carries her up to bed, and then he goes out to talk to JT about everything that happened while they were gone. And they kind of go over all the security concerns of the homestead there, like, It's a really big property, so they can't fence it all. It's just not, not really feasible.
But they have a fence, they can lock the entrance to, like, where the driveway is,
Right.
but because they were like, "We have friends," it's a whole like, it backs up onto, like, a river, so they can't, like, block that off.
And they don't
Um,
wanna do
and
enough
they
booby
don't
traps that, like, some innocent person or animal could get hurt because, like, they don't even know, like, for sure what they're dealing with. So yeah, they kinda talk about all that. And in the morning, Millie goes down for coffee and, like, nobody's around. And then her friends show up to bring her breakfast. So it's June and the twins. And they kind of talk about Clay, and Valerie did find a few more people who remembered these rumors about Clay being accused of assault in
Oh,
college.
we should say too that Valerie is it Valerie? These
The
girls
pregnant one or
are
the not
very
pregnant one?
yeah, the not pregnant one is very
Valerie.
like, "So here's Scott, is he
Is he
interested
single?
in ladies like me?" And Millie's kind of like,
Mm,
it's not the first time, it's like every time they see him, they're
yeah,
like,
because he's hot. But June,
and
who's been her best friend since childhood, like, sees the look on her face and is like, "Oh, nope, it's like that." Like, Millie's already claimed him. This is done.
yeah, but Valerie does not. Valerie says more than once is, and then this on this occasion too is kind of like, "What do you think?" And it's like, "Stop it.
Yeah,
We
stop
think
it.
no."
Yes, and so then Scott comes into the kitchen from a run in the rain with the dog, and
So
so
of
he's
course
like,
his shirt's all wet and sticking to his abs. Anyway,
yes,
it's
and the
terrible.
women are all, speechless, and it is hilarious. And so then later, Millie and Scott go to see the chief and talk, to the prosecutor. Um, he's still a prick, of course. They learn the names of the 3 men who tried to kill them. One name seems vaguely familiar to Millie, but she doesn't recognize his face really, so she's not sure, like,
Why that one is like
why.
sticky for
Yeah.
her, but yeah. But she said we
Um,
should look into this one just because
right. And
some
so, they go get takeout from the diner, and they run into Verna and her husband, and one of their kids. He
yeah, it
was
turns
recently
out
laid
that the
off
husband, yeah, has lost his job and Verna's not working because she's so pregnant that like her job, she'd been working
at the
helping out
bar.
like at the bar before,
Mhm.
and it just isn't like a great
Right.
place for her, like the level of pregnancy that she's at, and
Right, for sure.
um
And so kind of they had been talking before about, like, it might be sort of dangerous for Millie to continue leading these charters because she's like, "I don't want these innocent our customers to get wrapped up in, like, what if somebody tries to shoot me and kill somebody else?
now
Like,
that she's
I would."
been shot at like 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she's like, "It's not safe for me to keep leading these charters, like, I need to step back, but I gotta have somebody to do it, or else we're gonna have to cancel everything, and my aunt's business is gonna die, like, I can't we gotta figure something out." And so when she finds out that Alex has been laid off, she's like, "Oh, like, do you wanna come lead my charters for me this month? Like, we've got a lot going on, and, like, I need to step back." And he's thrilled because he grew up in town there, they've known each other a long time, he's a big fisherman, so, like, he's all excited
He
about
can
it.
do the job, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and
And they do have
so
that other lady, Lila, that's there, but
oh, right.
she has not been trained yet, like,
Yeah.
to do that, so
Yeah, she's mostly just been, like, acting as a maid, basically, like, cleaning up the cabins and keeping things in order. Um, and so he's excited about the job. And so on the way home, Scott suggests that Millie leave town and stay with his mom in Nantucket, and of course, she's not having it. And she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna run away and let the big men handle everything." Like, "Fuck off," basically. She's like, "I'm not doing that."
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Also, like, all this time, she's been kind of like, "What is your retainer?" And he's like, "No, I'm not charging you," and she's like, "I am going to pay you."
yeah.
And so they do have this, like, ongoing, and when he tells her that, maybe she should leave town, he's like, "Or I could fire you, even though I haven't paid you yet, but I'm gonna pay you, but I'm firing you." And, it's a whole, we do
Yeah,
not love. They
it's
they
funny.
they are not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah. And she threatens him. She says, "I will invent something that will torture you for the rest of your life if you try to send me away." Like, it might be something that beeps and follows you for the next 50 years. It might be like something the pebble in the bottom of your shoe, like, you're not gonna know, and, like, you're gonna be sorry, basically. It's very funny.
Yeah.
And so at home, Millie is thinking about who the that's who the supposed witness could be, who the prosecutor Skinner claims saw her kissing Clay that night and arguing with him that night.
Mhm.
She's like, there's no way that that's true. Like, and if it is, who is this person telling Skinner this and who hasn't told the chief or anybody else? Like, I don't, it seems super fishy. And
Well,
so,
every person in town has been like,
let me help you.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it's really weird to have then this person who like, and no one saw anything
right.
except now all of a sudden this
Supposedly
super
somebody did see
secret
something.
person has
Yeah.
seen.
So she can't find Scott or JT. And she's sort of like building up a head of steam. Like she's pissed off about her situation. Like nobody's there to talk it out with her, and she's just like getting worked up. And she sees Scott and Roscoe running up from the gate area in the rain, and she kind of flips out on Scott. She's so angry in general, and like I guess she feels safe taking
She's
it
just
out
like
on him.
frustrated too. There's like not like, her aunt's sick. She had saved up money to like help her aunt, and her job like pays for some of the stuff to like make sure
Right.
that everything's okay at home. And now she's lost her job. Someone's trying to kill her, but maybe she killed somebody, and like everything's a big old mess,
All
and
coming to a head. Yeah.
able to like she isn't able to fix it. So I think she is just like,
Well, and she feels impotent, and so she's like, "I'm gonna go to the bar and talk to some people." And he's like, "It's pouring down rain out here, and you're not thinking straight. Like, you're clearly upset. You're not driving somewhere. Like, I'm literally not gonna let you drive somewhere."
yeah.
And so they're like fighting, and she's like, "I'm sick of you telling me what to do all the time just because we fucked one time. Like, this is not. You don't get to do that, basically." And he's like,
Mhm.
he's not having that.
No.
And so he grabs her and he kisses her, and of course they like head inside up to her room. He basically is like, sexually torturing her a little bit. And he explains to her that, like, when it comes to her safety, she is going to listen to him. And like, too bad for her, basically. Like,
Yeah.
and
And
listen
it's
or
not
not,
like it's
I'm
kind
not
of like
mad at
it's not
it.
about this. It's just not safe. But
Yeah.
but I think they both are like super stressed out and need to
Yes.
blow off steam. And even though he just came from a
Yes.
run, it's like the
Yeah.
fact that she said she would go by herself immediately has him at like
Oh yeah.
11.
11 for sure. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, and it's super hot. I was not mad at it. And neither was she. She was good to go afterward.
Yeah.
So Scott wakes up from another nightmare, and he heads downstairs so that Millie can stay asleep. And he's thinking about everything that he'd be willing to do to keep her out of jail. And it's a lot, including like breaking his vow to uphold the law pretty much. Because at this point she means more to him than like anything else in his life now. And he's like, how did this happen so fast?
Whoops.
So yeah, that's the end of chapter 28. So still lots of things afoot. Still don't really know who's after her and whether or not all these things that are happening to her are even connected. So yeah, come back next week. We'll finish it up.
Wrap it up. See ya.
Bye.